few opening remarks, because obviously we have all the doctors and professors surrounding me here who can give you all the information and the foresight and insight that you need. So it's a pleasure to join the team of men and women leading the government of Jamaica's thrust to popularize and utilize science for national development at the Heads of Science Roundtable Talk. This meeting of the minds is critical as we seek to become a knowledge-based society and an innovation nation. I believe it is also quite timely when we consider its placement in the broader context of Science and Technology Month. In this technologically driven age, science, technology, and innovation are pivotal to our advancement. It is science that we must look to find solutions to the threats of the diseases, natural disasters, climate change, food insecurity, and poverty, which have the capacity to erode our progress and impede our development. The COVID-19 pandemic has proved that no country can survive in this era without a solid scientific base that is equipped to undertake pioneering research and development for the betterment of humanity. I must commend the men and women of science within this ministry and the wider Jamaica for moving mountains with limited resources and for championing the cause of science in your respective fields. As a government and certainly as a ministry, we recognize the importance of science to nation building. In fact, science, technology, and innovation are essential to creating the technology-enabled society as articulated in our National Development Plan Vision 2030. Through our science, technology, and innovation policy, we aim to deepen the application of science, technology, and innovation and benefit all aspects of national development by having a dynamic and responsive national system of innovation, a culture of innovation, a development agenda advanced by ST&I, and an excellent research and development capability and enabling ST&I policy environment. I must say that I am pleased with the effort to advance our ST&I agenda. The 2022 Global Innovation Index report states that in the Latin American and Caribbean region, Jamaica is among those countries that are outperforming relative to development. Within the upper middle income group, Jamaica has maintained its place as an innovation achiever. And in the Latin American and Caribbean region, Jamaica ranks best in terms of creative outputs, including its indicators such as trademarks and industrial designs. The report also shows that over the past decade, only Mexico, Peru, and Jamaica have gained more than 10 ranks on the index in the region. I believe this performance is commendable and a testimony to the hard work that has been done to advance ST&I in our society. Ladies and gentlemen, Jamaica has a significant place in the regional discourse on science. In recent times, Jamaica has been a part of several high-level meetings with our regional and international partners that have created significant partnerships and opportunities for building a more resilient scientific community. Permit me to underscore some of the noteworthy activities that we have been undertaking to further our ambitions in science. The Jamaica Cabinet has supported my appointment as chairman of the Committee of Science and Technology, COMSET, for the next 3 years. Assuming chairmanship of the committee, we'll position Jamaica as a key player in the global ST&I landscape. And coincidentally, I just chaired a meeting just yesterday for the entire day. Jamaica played a pivotal role in the hosting of the 6th meeting of the Ministers of High Authorities of Science and Technology, the REMSET, with the Organization of American States, the OAS. The ministry also hosted 2 science, technology, engineering, and mathematics STEM mentorship workshops for tertiary level students with plans to host others. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that we must begin to change the mindset of Jamaicans towards science. So many of our people equate science to labs and white coats, but the truth is not all scientists wear a coat. We must practice home remedies to our unique food creations. We are all scientists in our own way. As Science Minister, it is my duty to advance the creation of a legacy for Jamaica through science. This enduring legacy will rebound to the engendering and fostering a greater appreciation and application of science in our society. Our people must begin to understand the role of science in their everyday lives and apply scientific principles in all that they do. Our children ought to be taught the rudiments of STEM fields at the earliest educational level. And you'll see the Prime Minister driving that to the Minister of Education with the STEM schools that are to be built. Science must become a way of life in Jamaica, but how do we do this? We need greater public and private sector partnerships and investments in science to build an active science ecosystem in our country. As I look around this table and interact with our researchers and scientists, we have capable and competent minds to become a driving force in science. I take the opportunity to encourage our scientists, researchers, inventors, and innovators to continue on this path. Our continued sustainability and survival hinges on the work that you do, to the groundbreaking discoveries that you uncover. Ladies and gentlemen, undoubtedly we have made tremendous strides in our scientific efforts, but we have so much further to go. We cannot rest until we have a thriving scientific ecosystem and network. So today I hope will prove to be informative and engaging as we have the overviews of the portfolio areas by the various speakers. So I will now ask Dr. Paris Leoai, who is also my science advisor in the ministry, to give an overview of the proceedings, and then of course the agenda will continue. But I think that this is indeed a very useful day, long in coming, and I want to congratulate everyone who was a part of the thought process of this and the implementation, because we have got to make science attractive if we are to be able to get the full value of what it has to offer us as a country and our people. Thank you. Paris?
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming here. Thank you, colleagues, for joining me on the podium. My name is Paris Leoai. As the Minister said, I am the science advisor to the Minister. I'm also the chairman of the Scientific Research Council, the chairman of the International Center for Environmental and Nuclear Sciences, and I'm the chairman of the Executive Committee of the National Commission on Science and Technology, which itself is chaired by the Prime Minister, and the Minister is the Deputy Chairman for that commission. We had said that the engagement of the general public is going to be critical in getting science into the mainstream. The Minister said that scientists are more than white coats and labs and test tubes and so on. We need to demystify science. The education of science should not just be restricted to schools and to children. It involves many different stakeholders. The kinds of research that's happening right now in Jamaica's scientific sphere is already having economic benefits to everyone in the country and beyond. Case in point, there's a very simple product that's on our shelves that we take for granted, and that's sorrel. Sorrel used to be a Christmas drink. Mm-hmm. Now it's available on the shelves year-round. That's a product of Jamaican science. That's a product of the Scientific Research Council that has been able to transition into the mainstream commercial market by engaging with the private sector, engaging with consumers, understanding what they want, what they need, what they're willing to pay for it. All of these things are the products of Jamaican science. We're often too proud to say that we're not into mathematics, and that's not cool. But we need to just demystify it. Science is also more than just research for research's sake. We need to be able to translate that into dollars and cents and an improvement in the livelihoods of so many people, where we now have better paying jobs and better products on the market that are products of Jamaican science. And that's what we want to be able to present to you all today. There's a lot going on with the different sector agencies that are represented here. We do have the National Commission on Science and Technology that is based in the Ministry of Science and Science, Energy and Technology, but is also itself beyond just the Ministry of Science, Energy and Technology. There are many different agencies of government and beyond that are practitioners of science, and the National Commission is designed to bring them all together and to have that range of science coordination that's necessary for Jamaica. We do have the new position of the Netwayne Gardner as the Principal Director for Science within the ministry to give science the depth and grounding that's necessary for this thing to take root and to grow. It allows for the development of the science policies and the implementation that's necessary to ensure that the governance framework and the operations of science are all organized and properly coordinated. And then we have the main agencies of the SRC and ISENS that are conducting frontline work in science through their research and researchers. They are international leaders. The people from around the region and around the world look to us for guidance and leadership and sharing of information. So this morning we're going to have each of them present to you in very short a discussion on what each of them are doing in the science space. But before I go there, I just wanted to share with you a very important observation and reality, is that beyond the science and the pure science that's happening here, we should also note, Minister, the diversity component. Science leadership in Jamaica is very strongly female, and we're very proud of that. I mean, myself and Charles are outnumbered in our organizations with science leadership, and we're all the better for it. The SRC earlier this year, Minister, as you know, recognized eminent female scientist leaders in Jamaica. The future is bright for science and for diversity, and it's something we really should play up in terms of Jamaican science on the world stage. So with that being said, I'm going to open up the first portfolio area that we will share with you is the Scientific Research Council. Dr. Shara Watson is the Executive Director of the SRC, and she will share a lot of the very exciting things that they are doing right now. So, Shara, thank you.
Good morning. So, as you know, I am Shara Watson, the Executive Director of the Scientific Research Council, and the SRC, as we affectionately call it, is Jamaica's principal public body responsible for the promotion and the coordination and execution of scientific research and the popularization of the outcome from those scientific research activities. Now, we are here speaking about popularization of science, and one of the core mandates of the SRC is to popularize science and technology as tools to drive innovation. And we do this while supporting growth and development of the local agro-industrial sector through research, adaptation of available technology, creation of new technologies, and ensuring that those technologies are appropriate. Too often we hear that we are consumers of technologies created elsewhere, when we know there are specifics or unique characteristics to some of our issues based on our environmental conditions. We are developing solutions to solve the issues that we face as a society. And through the initiatives and programs of the SRC, we are actively creating that culture of innovation, that culture of not just identifying a problem, but almost instantaneously also looking to identify solutions to those problems. And we do that through providing training, technical assistance, consultancy services that are geared towards establishing and supporting micro, medium, and small enterprises. As part of the SRC's continuous efforts towards improving customer relationships and through effective communication, we were the first organization in the English-speaking Caribbean to actually receive ISO certification. So quality is at the helm or at the core of everything that we do at the SRC. And that is very important because Jamaica now, we can access markets that we were not able to prior to having world-renowned, recognized quality management systems and certifications. And this is one of the initiatives that the SRC led very early on. Throughout the years, the projects undertaken by the SRC have resulted in increased productivity and yield, export opportunities, employment creation and income generation, cost reduction, increased quality of standards, food safety, and establishment of industries. We heard our chairman spoke about sorrel. We did a similar thing with lemongrass. Before, we would only have it as a tea. Now you're having lemongrass lotion. You have lemongrass essential oils. It's now a very popular essence that we all can associate with Jamaica. And this was directly through initiatives and activities of the Scientific Research Council. So you can understand what it is that we do. And apart from so one of the core activities of the SRC is taking our local raw material and creating value or adding value to that, transforming it or translating it into products or services that can help to drive national development. And that is exactly what science is about. It is not convoluted or hypothetical. It's literal, practical approaches to solving problems or creating economic activities that will help to support us. So the SRC over the past 62 years enabled the development and growth of agricultural industries and manufacturing sectors in Jamaica through scientific research and the application of such research. And I'll just close off by speaking a little about our popularization initiatives and our support to science education in Jamaica. So as mentioned, the SRC is an agency within the Ministry of Science, Energy and Technology. Its mandate includes popularization of science, technology and innovation, encouraging the public, young and old, to appreciate and utilize science and technology. Our primary focus is to engage in scientific research to develop and enhance products and processes to positively enhance the quality of lives, not just for Jamaica, but ultimately the world. To this end, the SRC has implemented several programs and projects over the years, and these include our SRC S&T, Science and Technology, biannual conference, or biannual conference rather. And this November 15th to 17th, we will be having our 7th such staging. We also exercise teacher extension, where teachers come into the SRC and our sister institutions to see science in action so they can now translate the theoretical concept that they're giving to their students in real way. We also open our doors to students in the summer. We have our summer camps or summer schools where students can come in and see what is happening. We have our Next Gen Girls and Next Gen Boys science programs where top science students are identified and they're brought into the SRC for a week to shadow our scientists and be mentored into proceeding in scientific careers. We also have our STEM ambassador programs where practitioners, science practitioners or STEM practitioners engage in schools and support them in the delivery of their science programs and projects. We have our S&T X Extraordinaire, which was mentioned earlier. We also host science fairs, essay competitions, Young Scientists and Inventors Award, and several other initiatives, including our Conversation in Science, a quarterly forum in which we bring in scientists to have conversations with the public to help demystify science and technology and to translate its use and application to our everyday lives. So I'll end there until the question and answers.
Thank you very much, Shara. We're going to have questions at the end, so you can see the full range of scientific activities here. But just to point out again what Shara mentioned, export opportunities, food safety and quality assurance, all of these things affect every Jamaican. It's not something that is very difficult to understand. But ultimately, and again, as your colleague Minister Hill would note, Minister Vaz, the enabling of business is going to be very important to the national development goals and objectives of the country. We're going to switch now to Dr. Olive Jean Burrows, who is the Executive Director of the National Commission on Science and Technology, who, as I said earlier, looks at the cross-sectoral, cross-government linkages that are necessary to bring all the scientific activities in Jamaica coordinated together so that we are on the same page with the many different activities that are happening. Are you okay there with the microphone, Olive Jean? All right. All right, go ahead, floor is yours.
It's called Murphy's Law. No. Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Olive Jean Burrows, and as was said before, I am the Executive Director for the National Commission on Science and Technology, affectionately the NCST. It's not as well known as the Scientific Research Council. Some of you might not have even heard of the NCST. So then I realized that one of the things that we need to do here in advancing science and technology and bringing in other players so everyone understands what is happening is to talk a little about what we do, what our purpose is, and how we fulfill that role. So the National Commission on Science and Technology is an agency under the Ministry of Science, Energy, and Technology. It is the main coordinating body, as Dr. Ayi said before. It's the main coordinating body for advancing science and technology policy and strategy in Jamaica. What does that mean? That means we are that umbrella organization that brings everybody together. So our main goal, our main role then is to coordinate education, public education, partnerships with government, the private sector, which is one of those areas that we really need to focus on, academic institutions, as well as international scientific organizations. So the NCST's role is pretty important in the whole scheme of science and technology advancement. Our areas of focus are the same, or it mirrors the main goals of our national policy. So our initiatives are based on the development of science and technology in terms of implementation of the policies, enabling a policy environment. So what does enabling a policy environment means? It means that we shall I say, we monitor and we promote policies that are not in place right now. For example, one of the policies that we're tracking and pushing is for the nutraceuticals to be under the Food and Drug Act. So that is recognizing that there are nutraceuticals that are globally used and they are not covered by a specific act. So we feel that now our role is to promote that that is incorporated into the National Food and Drug Act. So that's an example of enabling a policy environment. Promoting excellent R&D capacity. What does that mean? It means that we are ensuring that our research and development is advanced, that we are doing things that enables the country to be recognized as an area of research and development, a recognized area of research and development. We are ensuring that we have the right facilities in place. We are bringing together those responsible for creating an environment that is accommodates what we need to move forward in science and technology. So we bring in other agencies and departments, and we collaborate closely with other government agencies, and as I said before, also with international agencies. We also look at soliciting funding from international organizations that support funding. There are several out there, we just don't know about them, but one of the mandates and one of the main roles of the NCST is to find those agencies and to encourage or to facilitate funding of our research and development projects. Because of course, research and development is not cheap. It requires funding. It requires funding from government, but also support from the private sector. I'm taking the opportunity also to appeal to the private sector in Jamaica to be more collaborative. They have the means more than government does. Government is trying to do its very best and accommodating the funding that we need to do certain projects. But for Jamaica to move forward, and we need the jobs, we need the facilities, and we need the infrastructure which the private sector has the ability to do. So I take the opportunity as the executive director for NCST with the responsibility, partially the responsibility to seek funding, appeal to the private sector in Jamaica, so to do. We also, as I said before, liaise with academic institutions. Currently, we partner with the University of the West Indies, University of Technology, and the Northern Caribbean University. And also, to a lesser extent, but we plan to move forward for greater collaboration with the Caribbean Maritime University as well. So we do have partnerships with academia. We are members of international organizations. We work closely with the UNESCO. We are part of the Inter-American Institute for Global Change. And this information sharing and learning from state-of-the-art international organizations is also a part of our role and something that we are very involved in at the moment. We also, and very importantly, promote a culture of innovation to expand the base of wealth. One example of that is the biennial Innovators Competition, which just ended this past few weeks. My colleague, Dr. Watson, spoke about the biennial conference that is 15th to 17th of November. Well, on the 17th of November, we will have our awards function where those who were shortlisted in this National Innovation Competition will be rewarded with cash prizes. They will be recognized, and follow on, we will be working with the Development Bank of Jamaica to help these shortlisted individuals to move forward towards commercialization of their products. So basically, we do a lot more than that, but what I would like to be taken away from here is that there is a National Commission on Science and Technology that is that coordinating organization which brings all the relevant stakeholders together. We monitor, we track, and we facilitate the advance of science and technology in Jamaica. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivine. Could I just ask you in 2 sentences, just share the mapping exercise that's happening with the National Commission?
Okay, so...
Who are partners on that project?
Right. So, as I said before, our areas of focus are aligned with the goals of our National Development Plan and the new national policy that was just approved this year. And part of that is to develop the S&T system in Jamaica. The first step in knowing what we need to do to develop our S&T system is to map what is available right now, what exists right now. So we are working in collaboration with the UNESCO, the PIOJ, the Planning Institute of Jamaica, and with the Science Division in the ministry, Dr. Gardner's division. We are collaborating on mapping the scientific landscape in Jamaica. What's involved here is that we are utilizing the UNESCO. There's a model that the UNESCO used to do this globally, referred to as GoSpin. That is a global observatory for science and technology policy instruments. So they use these particular instruments that they've used globally to develop questionnaires that are sent to the relevant stakeholders in science and technology. And for Jamaica, we have a list of close to 100. And these instruments or surveys are sent to these various stakeholders, and they look at, the instruments ask questions like, what's your legal framework? Do you have in place the things that you need for this particular organization to be running efficiently? You have what the operational instrument, and that one asks the question of how you operate daily, and then it will recognize whether you have all the tools that you need to operate efficiently. And then we have what is called the institutional framework, and that asks a question of this particular institution. So you have various institutions, right? You will have those that are responsible for safety and those that are responsible for regulations, etc. And again, does your structure, is it sufficiently up to the mark that you want? Is it following global standards? And so once all these three instruments or questionnaires really are completed, that comes back to the NCST, and we work with UNESCO to, shall we say, massage the data. They're able then to be able to see where the gaps are. Now, once you have the gaps, then you are able to know where the deficiencies are and to work towards filling those gaps. And of course, with the end purpose of improving your science and technology and innovation framework in Jamaica. So that's one of the major initiatives we're doing. Once that is done, we will now become a part of a global platform where other countries can look at what we've done and see similarities and then know how to progress. One of the things that we are proud of, the NCST as well as the science division in the ministry, is the fact that Jamaica will be first in the region to do this. So
Absolutely.
we're looking forward to that.
You can see Dr. Bowes looking very proud of her baby right there. The takeaway from all of this is the unlocking of value of science. Science investments that have already been made, science investments to be made, and translating this to a real national development goal, Minister. One of the important things to also note in collaboration with the NCST, there's also the National Foundation for Science and Technology that's chaired by Robert Levy from Jamaica Broilers. Again, the private sector engagement and association with Science Minister has always been very strong. And we continue to appeal to maintain that strength of relationship. The next person on our agenda is Dr. Natwain Gardner. She's the Principal Director for the new Science Division within the Ministry of Science, Energy and Technology. The division was created to allow for the deepening and strengthening of science policy and governance within the ministry framework. You'll notice, Olive Jean, Dr. Bowes was speaking about a lot of organizations outside of our portfolio. You spoke a lot to educational collaboration with the different tertiary institutions and so on. We are more than just, science is more than just the Ministry of Science, Energy and Technology. But within the ministry, we need to ensure that our roots and our foundations are strong enough to ensure that we carry this thing through. So Dr. Gardner, over to you.
Yes, good morning. Thank you very much. As Dr. Liwai indicated, I am Natwain Gardner, the Principal Director for Science here at the Ministry of Science, Energy and Technology. through the Ministry of Science, Energy and Technology, with responsibility for the science portfolio. The Science Division was actually established recently in 2018, and it was fully staffed early this year. Functions of the Science Division within the ministry include policy oversight on science, technology, and innovation for the government of Jamaica, and the development of science policies through proper functioning legislative framework is integral and very crucial for our development. One of our functions, one of the importances that we have is that we need to include the realization of the objectives that are put forward from the STNI policy that was actually tabled early this year, February this year, that was mentioned previously. We are actually currently undergoing the complete mapping exercise in tandem with UNESCO through NCST's brainchild and PIOJ in order to identify the gaps that currently exist within our science, technology, and innovation landscape. Now, what this particular project is important, how it is important, is that after identifying the gaps, we'll be able to develop more policy framework and more guidelines through a proper functioning legislation environment to ensure that these objectives and mandates from the STNI policy are actually realized. The role of the Science Division following this will ensure that a comprehensive national implementation plan will be done to ensure that all of the objectives are realized, and this will be done through interministerial collaboration and implementation. Now, what is also important is that there needs to be a cohesive effort by all the science entities that realize that a common goal has to be achieved, and through their different individual how it is that they have their institutional methods, we can realize that common goal together. One of the main priorities of the Science Division is to ensure that we maintain and we promote this synergy between all of the science entities. What was mentioned earlier as well is that Minister Vaz is the COMSIT chair, which is the Science and Technology Commission for the Organization of American States. And this particular role that Minister Vaz has, his functions, puts Jamaica in a very key position within the hemispheric landscape to ensure that we can provide expertise and guidance to our member states, and we have 34 member states within the OAS, as well as we can also receive expertise from other jurisdictions within those member states. For example, we're focusing a lot on artificial intelligence, transformative technologies, blockchain, and we also, Jamaica is interested in being a part of ensuring that we put together centers of excellence for blue and green economies within the Caribbean. And as his role as chair, we're going to lead these initiatives within the hemisphere, and that's very advantageous for Jamaica. The Science Division attests to the government's mandates to increase our thrust towards growth and development with using science as a driving factor to allow us to be a true key player in the global science, technology, and innovation landscape. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Natwain. Colleagues, the importance of what the Science Division and what the ministry is doing, and she mentioned the OAS COMSIT program, we are also understanding and being aligned with international best practices of science. Shara mentioned earlier about standards and quality assurance and those things. This is not just because it's science for science's sake anymore. We are an international player, and for that, we need to step up and up our game. It's where the minister spoke about the level of increase and growth of science in Jamaica is more than just research. It's about these types of networking, collaboration, and partnerships. The final presenter today is Professor Charles Grant. He's the Director General of the International Center for Environmental and Nuclear Sciences. This is where you really talk about heavy-duty applied sciences right now. And Professor Grant can speak to it, and I'm sure a lot of you guys may have questions later, but we do have a functioning nuclear reactor in Jamaica for the past 40 years. Now, this is a research reactor. This isn't the type of massive power plant that you guys may be thinking in your head. But the reality is that Professor Grant and his operations have proven and shown that applied heavy-duty nuclear sciences is alive and well in Jamaica. And how this is applied for national development is always going to be at the forefront of what we do. So over to you, Professor Grant.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Minister, colleagues. A strange mashup of words, right? Environment, nuclear. So how are they related? Well, this speaks to our original mandate, which, as Chair had said, started about 40 years ago, when it was decided that an important factor for the growth of Jamaica would be the understanding of the environment. To do this, we would need probes that could look into every aspect of our environment. That is, from rocks, soil, food, water, air. The ideal technique for this is a nuclear technique. We use subatomic probes, basically. This is why we have the reactor. We generate neutrons inside of this, and we use these probes to look into the very nuclei of all the materials that make up what is the Jamaican environment. From that, we are then able to track and trace how these elements move through the environment, how they impact on the quality of soil, the quality of our agricultural products, how this then in turn impacts on human health and agricultural exports. So, I mean, it has such a cross-cutting theme. So it involves, as I said, geochemistry, geology, biology, chemistry, mathematics, physics. So our complement of staff at the institution, which I'm afraid to say has been a well-kept secret in this country, which I hope fora like this will change, is very wide, and we need all types of persons, so not just nuclear physicists such as myself, but again, as I say, we work with chemists, biologists, and so on. So, going forward, what does this mean? How can this help socio-economic development? Well, one of our newest projects will be the introduction of gamma ray technologies again. So again, nuclear science at work. I mean, nuclear technology is far more widespread and pervasive than most people actually think. So the introduction of this technique will be in collaboration with my goodly colleague here, Dr. Chara Watson, looking at improving our agricultural product, increasing the yields of our products, and increasing the resilience of our products to climate change and various pests. It's a technique called mutagenesis, perfectly natural. There is no residual radiation on the products that are produced. All we're doing essentially is fast-forwarding nature. Now, many of you may not know, we are constantly surrounded and bombarded by natural radiation, right? That comes from the sun, comes from the universe. This, in turn, creates mutations naturally in plants that often gives us traits that are desirous for us. Gives us higher yields or resilient plants. By using these gamma ray treatments that we will be able to do here locally, we simply just speed up the clock. Instead of letting nature wait for 1,000 years to produce a new crop that is resilient, we can do it in a year or two. And I know Dr. Watson can again attest to this. Secondly, this same technique or this same gamma irradiator can have profound effects on the health sector. One of our first major products will be to look at the reduction in the population of mosquitoes, in particular the Aedes aegypti mosquito, responsible for dengue fever, chickpea, zickpea, by a technique called the sterile insect technique. This is whereby we will sterilize male larvae, the male mosquitoes. They will not be mutants. All we're going to do is essentially give them birth control. So they will mate with female mosquitoes, but won't have any offspring. So this, in conjunction with the methods that we're using now, will help to suppress the population of the Aedes aegypti mosquito. Secondly, we also can look at the shelf life extension of our products that we produce, things like mangoes and yams and tomatoes, all these seasonal fruits that often go to waste. So what we'll do again is apply radiation treatments to them. Again, it will not change the quality of the product. It will not leave any residual radiation on the product, but only remove the bacteria that increase spoilage and also remove the pests that are embedded particularly from the West Indies fruit fly. This in turn can help to improve our exports of these products. You may have heard of some preliminary exports that the Ministry of Agriculture had with mangoes, where this very same technology was applied in the States, but it only can be done in very small numbers if we have to send our product away. The idea is that we will have a demonstration plant here at the institution that will hopefully encourage the private sector to invest in a larger industrial unit so that all of our mangoes, instead of going to waste, will be able to be exported to a number of countries in the States, to the USA, Canada, and to Europe. And lastly, because this is not right now, this is the future. Having a nuclear reactor here for the past 40 years that we have run safely and securely is the basic foundation for the next big step that I think we can take in this country by the introduction of nuclear power to Jamaica. Previously, the larger reactors that the industrial nations built, due to economies of scale, were just way too large for us. As Paris had said, one single reactor could run most of the Caribbean. But with every advance, there's risk and there's balance. By having such large reactors, you end up with incredibly high amounts of energy in one small area. Under accident scenarios, this is a bad thing. The heat, or the residual heat, the decay heat as it's called, if the cooling systems break down, as was the case in Fukushima or in Chernobyl, that excess heat cannot be removed. It builds up so fast and so high, it actually reaches the point where it can actually melt the material, the so-called meltdown. With these newer reactors, the thinking is to break these large reactors up into smaller modules. The material is the same, but in the event of an accident, the amount of heat generated in these smaller masses will not be sufficient to melt the fuel. So that accident scenario, the end of the world scenario where the fuel melts, is no longer possible with these smaller modular reactors. So you have inherent safety. That to me means a lot. It's the same principles upon which the reactor that we have on campus operates by. So I am looking forward to a bright future in terms of having nuclear power here as part of an energy mix. Because believe it or not, just like the strange name environmental and nuclear, I am an environmental nuclear scientist. So I believe in the environment, I believe in renewables. Unfortunately, renewables alone cannot carry the base load and are not always available. To me, an ideal mix would be nuclear for base load, renewables for everything else. And just to end with our international and regional notes, Jamaica is in fact a regional leader for nuclear technology. We are the only small island developing state in the world to have a nuclear reactor. And in fact, we have been in charge of several international programs for small island developing states in collaboration with the International Atomic Energy Agency, and are in fact the regional leader, as I said, for nuclear technology. And we also monitor all users of ionizing radiation in the region. So we are unfortunately more known overseas than we are here, and as I said, I hope that changes after today's event. And with that, I thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Yeah, go ahead.
Professor Grant, I couldn't allow you to complete without saying a few words. It is almost as if you have been privy to some discussions that have been taking place within the government as it relates to nuclear, led by the Prime Minister, no other than the Prime Minister. Paris will be aware of it, but I want to assure you that what you have said captures exactly the sentiment of the government and their thinking, while realizing that nuclear would not be a short-term option, but definitely a medium to long-term option, which must be in the mix as a part of the solution as it relates to renewables. It will take intensive public education campaign, which has to start from now, which I'm assured by the Prime Minister that in short order he will introduce it, and then we will take it from there. But we have had discussions internally. We have had discussions with some of our partners in Canada to understand and get a better feel as to what the possibilities are for nuclear. And it is something that we do believe any country like Jamaica would have to think of for energy security in the future. And the good thing is that it's green. So there is a concern and a myth about nuclear of the past, not realizing that the technologies have improved significantly. And I know Paris is well versed on it and can say a few more words from the scientific aspect. But just to say that I can confirm definitively that that will be a part of the energy mix going forward. And we do know that it will not be a short term, but we are long-term thinkers and planners as government. And therefore, it is important that we send that signal that in the upcoming discussions in relation to renewables, that will definitely be a plank and a part of the thing. So I'm very interested to hear what your comments were a while ago, and it is in sync with where the government's direction and thought process is. So thanks very much for that.
Thank you, Minister. And again, from Professor Grant's presentation, you can see that a lot of cool applied science is going on that really touches every single person, not just scientists. One of the things Professor Grant can also speak to is how iSense treats with hazardous waste, because that's also a very important element, not just nuclear waste, because there are other types of hazardous waste. And the iSense coordinates very closely with the Hazardous Waste Regulatory Authority as well. So how do we become responsible stewards for the environment, both in terms of operations as well as applications of the advanced technology is going to be very important. With that, I'm going to open up to questions from the media and the audience here, to any member of the panel regarding what you've heard this morning.
Tractor. I mean, if this is, as you said, it will be the only kind of its nature for the Caribbean, correct? The nuclear irradiation,
yes,
forgive me.
So, right.
But tell us, give me a little, just for my layman understanding, what does this mean for Jamaica as it relates to energy? Because you say it's going to be huge and impactful. That's number one. And number two, you said this is not going to be implemented right now, but maybe in the near future.
Well, for the gamma irradiator, so there are two things. One was nuclear power, that by virtue of having a reactor here that we have, because the principles are exactly the same. The physical engineering, of course, is different because we have different needs. Power reactors want to conserve all the neutrons to generate more, splitting more heat. We, in fact, want the neutrons as probes for our experiments. But the gamma irradiator, this is a cobalt-60 source. So you've heard of persons getting treatment for cancer using radiotherapy. In essence, it's the same type of source. It's going to be configured differently. And what we do is introduce specimens, either it be plant materials if we want to develop new plant strains, or induce resilience against pests and so on. And or we can use the same irradiation treatment, so you do it for different times under different regimes, that will remove bacteria from the surface of the produce to slow down rotting, basically. So that will increase the shelf life. So I would like to think that if the private sector comes on board, that this can be done on the large scale that will increase exports. So that's socio-economic development right there, or economic development right there.
Right. Develop the economy from a socio-economic standpoint.
Well, I know we all have family overseas. Right. We all know that we love our Jamaican mangoes as opposed to anything else when they're over there. Right. We will be able to get our product into their markets. Because right now, the fumigation using the bromide technique is no longer considered feasible, carcinogenic. So our produce are no longer allowed to be exported to these markets. this form of treatment will allow these doors to be opened again. So I'm hoping that in the near future, with I would guess a $50 million investment for several plants in strategic places around the country, could really change the amount that we could gain from exports of these particular products.
Within a short term, within a year, 2 years?
Well, like I said, if we get the private sector on board, and I think once we get a proper agricultural person, I'm just a humble scientist. Right. I need someone to do the economics and the feasibility of it all, you know, who understands the markets. Right. But I am sure, because the rest of the world does it. We look at Mexico. Mexico, all their plants like this that I'm speaking of are right along the border of the US and Mexico. Their produce goes straight to these units, irradiated, and sent straight to
using
the
the same type of
technology.
technology.
Exact same technology, right.
So if Jamaica was to implement this type of technology, it would be far-reaching then for an economy.
Oh, very much so. I think it could be a real game changer.
If I could add to the discourse. We are already using the technology. The SRC, in collaboration with iSense, as well as the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, have been conducting research on, you've heard SRCs talk about the ginger project and the sweet yam project, is using this exact technology. But what we have had to do is to take the plant material to Austria, irradiate it, bring it back to Jamaica to develop the strains from them over several generations until we find the characteristics that we are looking for. In this instance, with our ginger, is resistance to the ginger rot disease or tolerance to the disease, where we are no longer losing our crops. We have had some successes. We recently closed out an aspect of the project in December 2021. And we are now doing the field trials from that research with the Ministry of Agriculture. So we're already utilizing the technology. It has been demonstrated to be very impactful and useful. But what we want to do, and what Professor Grant is speaking about, is actually having the irradiator here in Jamaica, where we don't have to travel all the way to Austria, send the materials all the way to Austria to initiate it. It now means that we can look at a far vaster range of plants that we can look to apply this kind of technology to. Exactly. Instead of just looking at ginger and sweet yam, we can now look at pineapple, sweet potato, whatever material it is that we can look at to increase, not just as a treatment to remove pests so that it can be exported, but also to enhance the quality of the material, the planting material that we have here that can help produce and boost our productivity in the agro-industrial sector.
So we didn't get a timeline from Professor Grant, but what needs to happen now? Where do we go from here to make it happen? You say we need to have the thing in Jamaica so we don't have to send it all over the world. Where will that injection come from? What needs to happen now?
Okay, so pandemic, forgetting timelines now. So it would be about 4 years ago we put together a project proposal to have such a unit installed in Jamaica. It was approved. We have approximately been given €1 million to do so. The equipment has now been selected. It will be housed at the International Center. So we're looking possibly at the end of next year. As you know, these are not off-the-shelf pieces of equipment. They're specifically built according to our needs. So that is going on right now. So we're in chain. I mean, if it wasn't for the pandemic, it would be here today. This is a real issue. So we should be there by the end of next year without a problem, I see.
And just to add, the equipment is being supported by the International Atomic Agency, International Atomic Energy Agency, and the government of Jamaica. So majority of it is being funded by the IAEA, but Jamaica, the government of Jamaica is also contributing to the procurement and the implementation of this instrument. So it will be housed by iSense, but it will most likely be utilized by the SRC and other scientific institutions that have several projects that we're implementing currently and in the past that have been funded and supported by the government of Jamaica and IAEA.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, my name is Corey Robinson, reporter from the Gleaner Company. Just a follow-up to Professor Grant. As you might have heard, the government said that this nuclear technology is something that they're looking into. As a scientist, what would be some of your advice to the government in terms of the long-term, short-term implementing this technology? And also, I'd love to hear a little bit about what the costs we're looking at in terms of implementing this technology and some of the aspects of safety that you would probably give some advice to the government about.
Well, I'm a scientist, but I'm also part of government. And I think what's taking place so far has been correct. Like I said, firstly, we have a reactor here. So some of the basic concepts, the functions, are the same, whatever your reactor is. I mean, there's size and so on, and engineering that are slightly different. But the first steps are there. Most important, secondly, I would like to say, the starting up of the Hazardous Substance Regulatory Authority, which is our nuclear regulator. So we have the regulatory functions in place, or at least the beginnings of it. I mean, there will have to be a specific development just looking at nuclear reactors. Right now, they're looking at the uses of ionizing radiation, but it's a very good start. In terms of cost, well, let me deal with safety first. As I said earlier, the conventional design was based on economies of scale. Build it bigger, get more in, because with nuclear power generation, the costing is front-loaded. It's all about the structure that you have to build around it and so on. The cost of fuel is quite minimal. It's like 5% of the cost of your construction. So fuel no longer becomes an issue, so you get a smoothing out of energy costing over a serious lengths of time. So you don't have these fluctuations like you do with oil and gas and so on. In terms of safety, like I said, large units, large amounts of energy in a very small space. By breaking them down into smaller modules, the so-called small modular reactor, you reduce that risk, because the amount of residual heat after you turn the reactor off, typically, the minute you turn the reactor off, 10 seconds afterwards, you're down to about 10% of the energy of the reactor at full power. Now, in a reactor of a gigawatt, 1,000 megawatts, that's going to leave you of 100 megawatts of energy that is just locked up, not being able to move out. That results, and that will continue to build up over time. That energy builds up so much that it's able to melt the fuel, hence the term meltdown. By having it in smaller units, the residual heat of a 50 megawatt unit, you turn it down, you're going down to 10%, that's 5 megawatts. That's not much. And that will continue to decay away as well too. So the reactor in itself is inherently safe from meltdown. Again, when it comes on to cost now, that's a difficult thing, because at the moment we know what the larger plants cost. It generates, the cost of energy generation is somewhere in the level of coal. Of course, it's decarbonized as well, so there's a benefit from that. But having the smaller modular units, we can look at it like the Henry T. Ford model. I know that may be a bit ancient for some of you, but by producing many small units, then you get cost savings. So if everyone builds the same kind of unit, instead of building one big one, you build 1,000 small ones. There is cost saving in that you can reproduce. You build it in mass production mode. So the exact cost is hard to kind of put a finger on right now until that everyone has come on board to say, okay, this is where we're going to go with this. And then you mass produce them and ship them, rather than having this elaborate unit that takes 10 years to build. So there will be other savings to be made. I just can't put a finger on exactly what that will be right now.
Just curious, are there any safety concerns as to where these reactors are placed?
Well, with any thermal unit, because what people should keep in mind is that with a nuclear reactor, the only difference from a coal-fired power reactor and a gas-powered reactor is the source of heat. It's a thermal unit, so it's going to require cooling. Ideally, with these types of units, I mean, the Russians already have a power plant that they use on icebreakers. That's about 50 megawatts, so it's quite small, but we have plants of that size on land right now. That's on a barge. So some of them could be sea-based, some could be land-based, they could be pretty much where our power generation units are now. So we're a small country, we don't have too much choice in terms of, it's not like the States where you can put it in the middle of a desert 1,000 miles away from anything. But the siting should not be an issue with these types of units. I know there's always the issue of everyone says, not in my backyard, but that's always going to be an issue. And as the Honourable Minister had said, public education is going to be key to the acceptance of the technology.
Any questions for these ladies?
Not as interesting as
Nuclear is a new buzzword. It's a new buzz topic.
I'm kind of wondering, how do we get more Jamaicans interested in science? We don't get, there's not the impression that, enough are, and particularly too, when we talk about students in schools, you don't get the impression, how do we get them more interested in science?
And I think what you said, I'm going to kick it off to both Dr. Gardner and Dr. Bowes, but you hit the nail on the head. It's not just Jamaican children interested in science, it's Jamaicans interested in science. And the start of that is for them to see it, work backwards, see the application, see the end result, see the products, and then make it cool, make it interesting, make it cheap, or make it a source of wealth creation for them. And then they'll be able to dial in a little bit more. You don't have to be a scientist to appreciate science, but I'll kick over to the ladies. Maybe Dr. Gardner, you go first.
Yes. So just to say, science, in order to get people interested in science, you have to understand that science is in every single thing that you do. When you take out ice out of a freezer, you put it in a cup, it melts, you have the condensation, that's science. When you put on your clothes were made from fibers. Fibers were generated as a result of some scientific process. When you sleep, when you breathe, everything involves some level of science. And it's just for persons to be able to appreciate that science underpins every facet of your life. Get them thinking, get them into critical thinkers, and make them appreciate it a little better. Dr. Burrows?
Very quickly, Dr. Burrows.
Okay, so very quickly, well, between Dr. Paris and Dr. Gardner, they've answered the question. But what I would add, and I think a question, one of the gentlemen in the back said, how do you get the children, for example, to appreciate science? Well, quick story. At 10 years old in my high school, I went to a general science class. Back then, you didn't start at the specific science subjects. You had general science. And there was an experiment with colorless copper sulfate. And when you hydrate that, you added water to that, it became blue. And I was fascinated. My point being, you do need to start in early education. And I think part of that is just piquing the interest at an early age. They have to see that, something you can benefit from that, or you can be doing something exciting. And so the idea of the popularization that SRC is doing is part of the whole effort to get youngsters interested in science. But also, I mentioned earlier that you do things to encourage not just children, but we also have the National Innovation Competition. It's for the common man in the street, anyone who can think clearly through a process, can decide that they want to put something together that in an innovation that can become something that you can now commercialize, and we provide that facility. Those who have anything that seem that it would be able to be commercialized or be of benefit to the Jamaican public, we collaborate with the DBJ, as I mentioned before, the Development Bank of Jamaica, to facilitate training sessions and finances and startup finance in order for them to proceed with that. There have been a number of cases like that where they've combined they have come up with their innovations. They've had the competition, they've done well, and they have gone to develop innovations that are now overseas, right? So that's another part of encouraging. So I see the whole gamut, from encouraging the young children, and by also going straight through the whole gamut of all Jamaicans, doing things to show that there is benefit, not only to themselves, but to Jamaica at large.
Thank you, Dr. Bowes. And we're going to begin wrapping up right now. But to drive the nail in the head for your question, I think one of the things we need to do as scientists, as I said earlier, is to demystify the science. We have seen challenges that continue with respect to science and the general public with respect to the COVID vaccine and climate change. These are scientific issues. It's not for debate. But scientists do need to stop talking with marbles in their mouth, talking enigmatically and sophisticated, whatever. We need to communicate this to the common person because we are also humans. And to try to stop making science be so exotic and to bring it down to earth. Thank you all very much for being with us this morning. I know nuclear did dominate a lot of the discussions. Imagine the possibilities. It's quite cool, but imagine the possibilities of nuclear energy, cheap energy. This can enable the country, Minister. We're talking about the possibilities of desalination now. We're talking about aluminum smelting. We're talking about so many different options. Data centers, Minister. Very energy intensive operation that can only operate in places that have cheap energy. Data centers, big data, this is the future. Ministry of Science, Energy and Technology. Everything is here. I mean, we talk about beyond the ministry. There are lots of opportunities here, both in government and the private sector. So think about the possibilities, communicate this, share this, and we're here for you. Thank you all very much.